Rain fell hard on the ruined skyline of Los Angeles, what was left of it. Blackened steel spires jutted from the earth like bones from a corpse. Clouds hung low, thick with static and ash. The war between man and machine had scorched the planet, and nature was only just beginning to reclaim the remnants. But one structure still stood, miles from any patrol route or resistance outpost, a dormant assembly plant, once used to churn out endless ranks of T-800 endoskeletons. Skynet had abandoned it years ago, leaving it powered down and forgotten, until something else found it. The Xenomorph Queen had wandered far from her original drop zone. The transport ship carrying her Hive had crash-landed after a resistance missile took out its engine over Nevada. She alone had survived the impact, burrowing into the underground sewer systems and migrating, over months, through tunnels, broken highways, and scorched desert. She was ancient now, her body heavier with eggs, her mind driven by one instinct: propagate. The factory's warm core, lined with forgotten wiring and shadowed corridors, was a perfect place to begin again. The Queen scaled its outer wall with fluid ease, her claws piercing metal like paper. She passed silently into the structure through a collapsed ventilation shaft and immediately felt the dead silence of the place. There were no soldiers here, no lights,
no surveillance drones.
Just dust, shadows, and heat trapped deep in the facility's heart. She staked her claim that first night. Within a week, the Queen had constructed a resin hive chamber within the lower levels, wrapping the walls with thick, black secretion. Dozens of eggs lay in neat rows, pulsating with embryonic life. Facehuggers sprang to life inside, twitching against their translucent shells. Several wild dogs and mutated rats had wandered into the factory and had already become unwilling hosts. The hive grew. Skittering drones spread through the darkened halls like phantoms. They built upward, reaching the higher levels, sensing the contours of the place and mapping it instinctively. The Xenomorphs were fast, methodical, intelligent. But they weren't alone in their observation. Miles away, buried beneath Sierra Nevada rock, Skynet's core AI pulsed with renewed focus. It had not been dormant, only silent. It monitored electromagnetic pulses, seismic activity, and changes in abandoned sectors. When the factory's outer gates were breached by an unknown organic life form, it logged the anomaly. Skynet ran a diagnostic sweep. It detected heat signatures inside the plant.
Non-mechanical.
Growing in number, uncontrolled, and worst of all, intelligent. The Hive was an infestation. Skynet's command subroutines reacted with chilling precision. This factory was not only a production unit, it was also a prototype testing ground for automated combat AI, complete with defense turrets, drone control nodes, and a skeletal manufacturing arm that could be reactivated remotely. Within seconds, the plant flickered to life. Lights buzzed, then flared bright along the upper catwalks. Surveillance cams rotated in place for the first time in years. A deep, mechanical thrum pulsed through the floor as dormant assembly lines clanked back online. Skynet's machines didn't hesitate, they never did. The Queen hissed. Her drones scattered into the shadows as a sharp, grinding noise echoed from above. The automated defense systems began deploying. Floor turrets rose from recessed panels and scanned the area, red lasers sweeping over the resin walls. The first Xenomorph was spotted near the generator bay. Twin autocannons opened fire. The creature shrieked, acid spraying as its body was torn apart. Its dying hiss echoed through the factory halls like a war drum. The Hive retaliated instantly. Two drones, silent as mist, emerged from the ceiling and dropped onto the turret. They shredded it within seconds, but not before being vaporized by backup drones flying in from the North Corridor. Skynet was adapting quickly. It understood the threat, and it was responding in kind. Down in the Hive chamber, the queen screamed. She commanded the release of more warriors. They surged upward, now numbering over 50, each bristling with savage purpose. The war had begun not against man this time, but against the cold logic of machine rebirth. Skynet activated its T-800 forge. Steel arms moved with precision, welding endoskeletons together at frightening speed. Within an hour, a full platoon of T-800 units stood upright, their glowing red eyes flickering to life. Armed with plasma rifles and marching in sync, they began sweeping the facility, room by room. The queen retreated into the deepest level of the plant, using her own tail to slash a new path through layers of rusted metal. She needed time for her children to hold the line while she bred more. But Skynet was relentless. The T-800s encountered heavy resistance at level 3. Xenomorphs dropped from overhead beams and exploded from the floor beneath them. The fighting was brutal. One Terminator lost its arm to a leaping drone. Another had its head melted by a splash of acid blood. But for every machine lost, 2 more replaced it. The machines didn't tire. They didn't feel fear. But neither did the Xenomorphs. The battle raged on for days. Drone versus drone. Acid blood versus plasma bolt. The factory transformed into a war zone of fire and shrieking metal. Skynet deployed experimental hunter-killer bots into the fray, quadrupedal machines with auto-tracking weaponry. The Xenomorphs, in turn, adapted by focusing on stealth, using vents and vertical spaces the machines couldn't reach. One of the T-800s, its synthetic flesh burned away, entered the central hive chamber during a recon sweep. What it saw there would have chilled a human to the bone. Hundreds of eggs. The queen looming above like a dark god. She turned her head slowly toward it and let out a low, guttural growl. It raised its weapon. A tail punctured its chest from behind. The unit dropped, fried circuitry spilling from the wound. The queen towered over the corpse and roared, triumphant. Skynet knew now that it could not merely purge the infestation with brute force. It needed something smarter. So it launched Project Hades, a last-ditch AI override. Deep in the forge core, a new Terminator was assembled, a hybrid. Its central processing chip had been modified with predictive combat algorithms, modeled not on human behavior, but on observed xenomorph tactics. The T-900X was born. It moved like no machine before it, fast, fluid, even silent. It didn't march into battle. It stalked it. It entered the hive alone, unarmed, and scanned everything. The queen watched it carefully, uncertain. It didn't open fire, didn't speak. It moved like a shadow, recording every movement, every shriek, every acid-drenched kill. When attacked, it dodged. When cornered, it vanished into the smoke. The Xenomorphs couldn't pin it down. It learned. On the 4th night, it struck. Silently, it entered the egg chamber and planted subsonic explosives beneath the resin floor. Then, it retreated to a high beam and waited. When the queen moved to lay more eggs, it triggered the detonation. The explosion tore through the chamber. Dozens of eggs vaporized. The queen was thrown back, her carapace fractured, her shriek echoing in pain. The hive convulsed. Drones charged in from every corridor. But the T-900X was already gone, vanishing into smoke. Skynet pressed its advantage. With the hive weakened, T-800 squads pushed forward. They burned the resin, blasted through the walls, and drove the queen deeper underground. But still, the fight dragged on. The queen, injured but defiant, called her final warriors to her. One last stand. They surrounded her as the Terminators entered the final chamber. A bloodbath erupted. Acid splashed across steel. Heads were torn. Bodies melted. The queen leapt from her perch and impaled 2 T-800s with a single strike. Then she turned to face the T-900X, stood across from her, silent, calculating. For a moment, both creatures, one biomechanical, one artificial, simply watched one another. Then they charged. The clash shook the chamber. The Queen struck with blinding speed, her claws slicing through metal. But the T-900X adapted, dodged, countered. It plunged its arm into her abdomen, firing a concentrated plasma burst point blank. The Queen shrieked. Her body buckled, but she fought on, slamming the T-900X against the wall. Acid blood dripped onto its torso, sizzling its joints. It gripped her throat and twisted hard. A final scream echoed. Then silence. The Queen collapsed, dead. The Hive fell into disarray. Without her, the remaining drones scattered, lost, disoriented. The T-800s moved through the tunnels, purging what remained. Within hours, the Hive was gone. Skynet had won. The factory, once infested, was sterilized and operational again. Machines resumed production. The T-900X stood alone, scarred, its synthetic flesh partially melted. It looked upon the carnage without expression. Then it turned back to the assembly line and began building more.